Hi there. So today I'd like to talk about boundaries and the importance of managing our boundaries. Because if we manage our boundaries correctly, we can reduce the amount of stress and the amount of overwhelm we find in our jobs. And ultimately, I guess, if we don't manage our boundaries correctly over a prolonged period of time, that could eventually lead to burnout in extreme cases. And obviously, that's not something that's good for us, and it's not good for the organization either. So it's important that we manage them. Now, sometimes when we get into conversations about boundaries, people feel, oh, I'll come across as being inflexible or unhelpful or whatever. So that doesn't necessarily have to be the case at all. If we put in a good day's work, a good week's work, and we work well, it is okay at that point to have boundaries as well and have those pre-agreed with our team, with our boss, with our peers. It's a very, very important conversation to have. Now, sometimes people don't like to get into conversations around boundaries, and it could be because of, it could be guilt, it could be fear, it could be self-doubt. It just depends. But it's important for us as well as leaders and managers that we set the tone, that we set the culture, and that we set an example around our boundaries and also how we respect other people's boundaries as well, because that can be very, very empowering for our people, our teams as well. So giving clarity around that is a very, very important thing we can do as managers. I always say to people, it's good to revisit and keep in mind your values. So again, I've talked about values and how to identify them and live by them, and the importance of doing that in previous videos. But if we look at our values, again, it's very, very important because it just leads into how we set our boundaries. So if we find we're going outside of the boundaries and boundaries are being tested, it's usually because it's impinging on some of our values. So that's always a telltale sign whenever that happens. So it's about communication. It's about being clear in terms of what boundaries are, and it's about communicating that to people so that there's an awareness and there's an understanding and there's a reasonableness about that. So there's a very simple technique. Basically, it's called the yes-no model. And it's a very good question to ask yourself. So if you feel your boundaries are being pushed, you need to ask yourself the following question. If I say yes to this, what am I saying no to? Now that might seem something very, very simple, but if you are saying yes to something and it's going beyond your boundaries, you are saying no to something else, and you need to figure out what that is and what price is it you're actually paying for that. And you have to ask yourself, by saying no to something, how is that serving me? A very important question to keep in mind. And finally, it ties into time management as well. So again, we would have done work and sessions previously around time management, the time matrix, and so on and so forth. So it's very important that we manage our time correctly and we chunk tasks down and we work as efficiently as we can. And if you do all of that, then you should be very clear in terms of what your boundaries are. And then if you communicate to people what those are and people respect them and vice versa, it can lead to a very productive and a very harmonious workforce. And it ensures productivity and our mental and physical well-being. So I hope that helps.